What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of Shoots with Coops. And today we're going to be talking about the Carl Zeiss 35mm 2.8 Biogon lens. Let's get to it. Alright guys, so I don't generally do lens reviews, to be honest. I find that lens reviews, can be a little bit boring, a bit tedious. Everyone wants to sit there and do sharpness tests and chromatic aberration and so on and so on. And that's just not me, not why I started this YouTube channel. But this lens, the 35 2.8 ZM for Leica M mount, is an amazing lens, and there's pretty much no information on YouTube whatsoever about it. So I thought, being someone who's owned this lens for a long time and extensively put it through its paces, I'd share it with you guys today and tell you a little bit about the lens and why it's so great. So, I only recently acquired my 50mm f2 planar lens for my Leica M7, but since I got my Leica, I have pretty much had this 35mm attached to it non-stop. It was, until recently, the only M mount lens that I've owned, and I've honestly never ever thought about getting another one because this lens has served me so good. Now, if you're thinking about this lens, pretty much you're going to be comparing it to the 35mm f2 version, which is considerably more expensive. So you're probably looking for a 35mm. Obviously you're looking at these because you probably can't afford Leica glass, which is cool, not many of us can. So you're probably looking at Zeiss or Voigtlander. And if you're looking at Zeiss, you'd be looking between the 2.8 and the f2 version. So let's talk about the f2.8 version, which I think completely goes under the radar because people think, oh, it's only a 2.8, it's too slow. But let me tell you a few things about this lens and why it's so great. So first off, we'll quickly get the specs out of the way on this bad boy. So the lens has an aperture range from 2.8 to f22. Its closest focus is like most rangefinder lenses and 0.7 meters. 7 elements in 5 groups. It is 52mm wide and 55mm long. So it is quite a small lens, and it only weighs 200 grams. This thing is tiny. So pretty much, first of all, we might as well do a little unboxing, I suppose. So in the lens, inside the box, it comes in a little styrofoam case. You do not get a lens hood with this lens, but pretty much only 2 important things that you guys are going to need in here is, one, we have our certificate, signed by the factory guys at Zeiss, and your warranty. It's probably the only 2 things you need. User manual doesn't have that much good information in it, but make sure you hang on to those 2 things. Probably really good if you decide to sell it in the future, so don't lose these. So the biggest thing, and let's get it out of the way first of all, obviously, and that's the price of this lens. Okay, so when I bought this, brand new, it cost me 850 Australian dollars. Still quite expensive, but it is a 35mm lens. It's a Leica lens. You're going to pay pretty good. You're going to pay a lot of money for anything that's an M or ZM mount. But $850 brand new for this bad boy. Now the f2 version, so the f2 35 f2 Zeiss lens, that's about 1,300 Australian dollars brand new. So essentially, this is $500 cheaper, and that is a lot of money. I mean, it might not be a lot of money to some, but it was a lot of money to me. And after I, pretty much have spent most of my money on the M7, I didn't have, a whole bunch of cash left. So I decided to go, and I was a little bit reluctant at first. I was like, okay, it's only a 2.8. I know Voigtlander make a really cheap 35 2.5, the color Scopar lens, but I really wanted Zeiss because I know how great Zeiss is. I thought, okay, 2.8. Let's just do it. I'm sure it'll be fine. And I am so glad that I did, guys. This little thing, I mean, the fact is, first of all, it is considerably smaller than the 35 f2 version. I mean, this thing is tiny. When it's mounted, I'll mount it on my M7 now just so you guys can have a look. But when it is mounted, it is so small, and it just is the most unobtrusive lens I have ever used. I mean, look at that. It barely protrudes from the camera. I think it is a lot like the Voigtlander 35 2.5 in that regard, but we're getting Zeiss quality here. But the thing is tiny, barely protrudes. It has a very short focus throw. I think it's pretty standard for most Zeiss ZM mounts. The f-stop increments go up in a third, which is, usual of Zeiss lenses, which is really, really handy for getting that really, you know, fine exposure. But look, she's just so tiny. And the biggest thing that we're going to get to now, I suppose, the biggest thing about this lens that surprised me is the image quality. Wide open, even at 2.8 wide open, this thing is tack sharp across the board. There is pretty much no barrel distortion whatsoever on this lens. Stop down, you know, sweet spot, I would say, you know, at 5.6, and anything onwards is, you know, going to be absolutely sweet. But you know, this thing will surprise you at how sharp it is at f2.8. I couldn't get over it. You know, I have shot, you know, environmental portraits of people, landscapes, and this lens just performs time and time again. Like, I'm so used to it, you know, I know the results I'm going to get, you know, every time I shoot with this lens. But it is absolutely amazing. And when you're saving $500 that you can, like I did, you know, put that kind of extra money towards, you know, getting a second hand. I bought this 50 second hand. You know, that extra $500 was put aside and went towards buying another lens instead of spending all that extra money just to get, you know, 0.8 of an aperture stop more. You know what I mean? It's really not that much, guys. I mean, you're with that, you know, sort of that amount of aperture, you're really splitting hairs. I mean, I usually shoot a 400 speed film, Tri-X or HP5, occasionally push it, but even when I get into dark situations, and even though sometimes I do have to go wide open and shoot at a 15th of a second, but you know, rangefinders, you know, you can handhold that really slow shutter. It's, you know, well, soft shutter, I should say, is fantastic for that. But even then, you know, if I have to push this lens to its limits, it still performs. You know, it is amazing, and it's definitely something that you guys should consider buying if you're a bit short on cash, or you just want to save some money and put it towards something else. But without further ado, this is what you guys came for, the images. There is, you know, like I said, there's barely anything on YouTube about this lens, so I'm going to hit you guys with some of my favorite images I've shot with this 35 2.8 so you can judge it for yourself. Alright guys, that does it. I hope this was informative. You know, like I said, there's barely any information about this lens on YouTube. And if you guys come across one, if you're lucky enough, I should say, to find one secondhand, buy it, because I've never seen one of these secondhand ever. But even if you're going to buy it brand new, it's definitely worth the money. The results are amazing and you will not regret it. So that does it for me, guys. Thanks for watching another episode of Shoots with Coops. I'll catch you in the next episode. Happy shooting.